Welcome to Galería de la Raza's podcast. In hopes to stay connected with our folks, we are excited to launch this virtual space that will enable us to continue to pursue our mission. Born out of the legacy of cultural activism, Galería de la Raza Studio 24 was founded in 1970, dedicated to promote Chicanx Latinx art and culture. Our creative placekeeping ethos is rooted in social inclusion and justice, where community arts are central to navigating the complex intersections of urban development, social inequality, affordable housing, and the historical cultural legacies of communities of color. To implement our mission, the Galería supports Latinx artists in the visual, literary, media, and performing arts fields whose work explore new aesthetic possibilities for socially committed art.
Bienvenido al podcast de Galería de la Raza. Con la esperanza de mantenernos conectados con nuestra gente, estamos emocionados de lanzar este espacio virtual que nos permitirá continuar con nuestra misión. Nacida del legado del activismo cultural, Galería de la Raza Studio 24 fue fundado en 1970, dedicado a promover el arte y la cultura Chicanx Latinx. Nuestro espíritu de mantenimiento creativo está arraigado en la inclusión y justicia social, donde las artes comunitarias son fundamentales para navegar la compleja intersección del desarrollo urbano, la desigualdad social, la vivienda asequible y los legados histórico-culturales de las comunidades de color. Para implementar nuestra misión, la Galería apoya a los artistas latinx en los campos de las artes visuales, literarias, mediáticas y escénicas, cuyas obras exploran nuevas posibilidades estéticas para el arte socialmente comprometido.
Hello, my name is Ani Rivera. I'm the Executive Director at Galería de la Raza. I'm from the borderlands of San Diego, Tijuana, and have lived in the Bay Area since 1998. From the onset, my work has centered on supporting children, youth, and families, which led me to the community development sector. In my capacity as the Executive Director at Galería, my work explores the intersections of community development, art, and social practice with the focus on creating equitable and sustainable models whose practices center on understanding how power, access, and resources can be used in the service of justice. As a Chicana feminist, I believe in the cultivation of sisterhood in the next generation leaders. As such, I serve as a board treasurer at the Chicana Latina Foundation, whose mission is to empower Chicana Latinas in higher education through scholarship and leadership training.
My name is Yvette Diaz. I am the Curatorial Program Coordinator at Galería de la Raza. My interest in Chicanx Latinx art led me to pursue a degree in art history and ethnic studies. Later on, I applied to Galería de la Raza as an intern. Now, as Curatorial Program Coordinator, my focus is to continue Galeria's mission of creative placekeeping and community development through the arts.
We are thrilled to launch the Sanctuary City Project podcast series. This series will consist of 3 episodes highlighting a public art project that centers diverse perspectives of sanctuary. Today, we will focus on the artistic work and creators. Additional podcast episodes will highlight how historical cultural legacies survive in an urban setting and colonial displacement, whether that be ancestral lands or by migration.
Estamos encantados de lanzar la serie de podcasts del proyecto The Sanctuary City Project. Esta serie constará de 3 episodios que destacan un proyecto de arte público que centra diversas perspectivas de santuario. En este episodio nos enfocaremos en el trabajo artístico y sus creadores. Episodios adicionales destacarán cómo los legados culturales históricos sobreviven en un entorno urbano y el desplazamiento colonial, ya sean tierras ancestrales o por migración. From its inception, the Sanctuary City Project has aimed to engage audiences in creating and spreading stories of migration, deeply informed by the community's participation and contributions in direct relation to their lived experiences. Through interactive installations, mobile print shops, and public art interventions, artists Sergio de la Torre and Chris Treggiari have collected and archived over 700 responses to questions that reflect on the notion of sanctuary. Responses to these questions have been collected and turned into posters, banners, and public art projects.
Desde su inicio, The Sanctuary City Project ha tenido como objetivo involucrar al público en la creación y difusión de historias de migración profundamente informadas por la participación y las contribuciones de la comunidad en relación directa con sus experiencias vividas. A través de instalaciones interactivas, imprentas móviles e intervenciones de arte público, los artistas Sergio de la Torre y Chris Treggiari han recopilado y archivado más de 700 respuestas a preguntas que reflejan la noción de santuario. Las respuestas a estas preguntas se han recopilado y convertido en carteles, pancartas y proyectos de arte público.
Galería de la Raza is thrilled to partner with Mission Economic Development Agency, or MEDA, to temporarily activate the 2205 Mission Street facade with the Sanctuary City project. Installed on a site used by the local mission community as a vending hub, as well as a site earmarked for future affordable housing, this public art intervention will center community dialogue around the politics of sanctuary and who gets counted in this country.
Galería de la Raza está encantada de asociarse con Mission Economic Development Agency, o MEDA, para activar temporalmente la fachada del edificio localizado en 2205 Mission Street con The Sanctuary City Project. Instalado en un sitio utilizado para la comunidad local de la misión como un centro de venta, así como un sitio destinado a viviendas accesibles en el futuro, esta intervención de arte público centrará el diálogo comunitario en torno a la política del santuario y quién es contado en este país.
During this contentious election season, on top of a global pandemic that has disproportionately affected Brown, Black, and Indigenous communities, and the ongoing calls for racial justice and police defunding, the Sanctuary City Project highlights the importance of public space as instrumental for mobilization and essential to our community's mental and physical well being during abnormal times. During this public art intervention, we aim to provide a moment of respite while also joining local and national conversations that concern our communities.
Además de una pandemia global que ha afectado de manera desproporcionadamente a las comunidades negras e indígenas, durante esta temporada electoral que se ha enfocado en llamados hacia la justicia racial y el desfinanciamiento policial, The Sanctuary City Project destaca la importancia del espacio público como un instrumento de movilización para el bienestar físico y mental de nuestras comunidades. A través de esta intervención de arte público, nuestro objetivo es brindar un momento de respiro y al mismo tiempo unirnos a las conversaciones locales y nacionales que son de importancia para nuestras comunidades. As an artist and educator, Sergio de la Torre's work often invokes collaborations with subjects and invites both intimate and critical reflections on topics related to housing, immigration, and labor. De la Torre purposely works with individuals from marginalized sectors of the city he works in, including factory workers in Tijuana, shoeshine boys in Mexico City, undocumented immigrants in Los Angeles and San Francisco, and evicted families in Oakland. In his work, De la Torre has tried to approach the lives of these individuals not as victim subjects, but rather has attempted to re examine the meaning of their actions in the context of shifting global conditions.
Como artista y educador, el trabajo de Sergio de la Torre invoca colaboraciones con los sujetos que invitan a reflexionar tanto intimidades como críticas sobre temas relacionados con la vivienda, la inmigración y el labor. De la Torre trabaja deliberadamente con personas de sectores marginados en las ciudades en que destaca su trabajo, incluyendo maquiladoras en Tijuana, boleadores de la Ciudad de México, inmigrantes indocumentados en Los Ángeles y San Francisco y familias desalojadas en Oakland. Su obra, De la Torre ha tratado de abordar la vida de estos individuos no como víctimas sujetos, sino más bien ha intentado reexaminar el significado de sus acciones en el contexto de las cambiantes condiciones globales.
Welcome, Sergio. In your work, you mention you place the lives and experience of individuals not as victim subjects, but rather attempt to re examine the meaning of their actions in the context of shifting global conditions. Why is that of value to your work, and how would this shift perspective of these individuals?
En tu trabajo colocas la vida y la experiencia de los individuos no como víctimas sujetos, sino que intentas reexaminar el significado de sus acciones en el contexto de las cambiantes condiciones globales. ¿Por qué es eso un valor para tu trabajo y cómo cambiaría esta perspectiva de estas personas?
Thank you for the for that question. I was trained as a photographer. I studied photography first in Chula Vista, San Diego County, and then San Francisco at the California College of the Arts and Crafts. And uh, I started taking photo classes in 1988. And at the time, photography was being challenged by not only critics but by photographers themselves. I had a I was formed as a documentary photographer, and so that crisis that we had in the late '80s pretty much informed my practice up to now. I studied with Liz Cisco in Chula Vista, and I'm sure you remember Liz Cisco, David Avalos, and Luis Hawk. They had a collective, and they used to work on issues regarding immigration and labor in San Diego and also in Tijuana. I also studied with people from the BAUTAF, the Border Art Workshop, Taller de Arte Fronterizo, Richard Liu, David Sanchez, Michael Schnorr, and I'm sure you remember that for them, it was the border was a site of intervention. So most of their works happened at the border. I was young at the time. I really had no idea about my career or what I wanted to do, but I was very involved in their projects, and I was, always, if not constantly, documenting their performances at the beach or at the border. I work with Michael Schnorr very closely on other printing projects, and again, Lee Cisco was probably the biggest influence that I had uh, at that age in my career. And for them, the public participation was very important at a point that it was mostly that participation that mattered, not the actual work of art. Uh, so from them, I learned that including the audience, your subjects was pretty much what made the art project interesting, if not valid. I moved to San Francisco in '93, and I started working with other collectives in San Francisco. So with Julio Morales and Domingo Nuño, we work on Los Tricksters, kind of like a performance group. And we also had artist participation in our projects. I worked with Coco Fusco on a couple of projects in Venezuela, in Caracas, and South Africa, and it was also artist participation. With Vicky Funari, we completed Maquilapolis in '06. Maquilapolis is a documentary in factory works in Mexico, and it was pretty much the same kind of like approach. So the public has been very important in these projects that that I have engaged with. I see them, I see my projects as conversations, and I don't have the last word. They don't have the last word. It continues once it leaves your studio. It's kind of like this living archive that constantly changes.
Great. Big performance influence in your work, I can see. um, the project title that we're working on is the Sanctuary City Project. What is sanctuary to you? How do you define that?
El título del proyecto es The Sanctuary City Project. ¿Qué es santuario para ti?
Esa fue la primera pregunta que empezó el proyecto. ¿Qué es un santuario? En 2007 me invitan a participar en un proyecto comunitario en el San Francisco Art Institute. En aquel tiempo, Hu Han Ru era el curador y director del programa de Museum Studies, y de la Galería Walter McBean Gallery. Con Hanru yo había trabajado antes en otro proyecto, por lo tanto, ambos sabíamos la capacidad que teníamos para trabajar juntos. La idea era como, preséntame un proyecto comunitario que incluya a estudiantes de maestría en el Art Institute. Y me dio 24 horas para armarlo. 2007, yo para entonces me encontraba viajando muchísimo con Maquilápolis, con mi documental,
Gracias.
y cada que regresaba a Estados Unidos veía este tipo de alertas, ¿sí? Amarillo, naranja, rojo, y esto es durante la guerra en Irak, que nos tenía a todos como de así asustados y un poco como muy sacados de onda. Eh, la idea de la alerta amarilla, naranja y roja era to keep America safe, ¿no? Y la pregunta que yo tenía, bueno, pero ¿de quién nos quieren salvar y a quién van a salvar? ¿Sí? Y empecé a hacer, obviamente que querían salvar al país, no a la gente necesariamente, y querían salvarnos de los y las terroristas. 11 de septiembre tenía 4 años, la guerra con Irak tenía 4 años, entonces habían como muchas cosas pasando y durante esa investigación de a quién quieren salvar, yo empiezo a entender que San Francisco es una ciudad santuario. Es una ciudad que protege a sus ciudadanos indocumentados. Empecé a investigar más sobre la idea de ciudad santuario y me llevó a los años 80, cuando en Estados Unidos cerca de 250 ciudades se denominan ciudades santuario. Ah, Estaban respondiendo al éxodo masivo de migrantes de Guatemala, Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, América Central. Fueron las iglesias y algunos activistas políticos que empiezan el movimiento santuario. Y la idea era darle un espacio seguro a la comunidad indocumentada, que la policía municipal no colaborara con la policía federal. Eh, y la pregunta, ¿qué es un santuario? Es la que da pauta a todo este proyecto, a todo lo que hemos hecho en los últimos casi 13 años.
One of the current locations of this iteration of the Sanctuary City project is on the corner of 18th and Mission Streets. Can you talk about your personal history with this intersection? Understanding the social dilemmas and challenges we're facing, including displacement, economic inequality, and global pandemic, who and how do you see this project serving?
La ubicación actual de esta iteración de The Sanctuary City Project está en la esquina de las calles 18 y La Misión. ¿Puedes hablar de tu historia personal con esta intersección? Al comprender los dilemas sociales y los desafíos que enfrentamos, incluido el desplazamiento, las desigualdades económicas y una pandemia global, ¿a quién y cómo crees que sirve este proyecto?
I moved to San Francisco in 1993, and I lived in the Mission, here in the Mission on 22nd and Harrison. And that building, the one on Mission 18th Street, was a furniture store when I moved here. So I saw it open. I was always, attracted by the architecture. Um, and then at one point, the building closed. And probably for the last 15 years, I'm not sure if longer or shorter, that building has been closed. The When you start looking at immigration issues in this country, you cannot talk about gentrification. You cannot talk about displacement. So that's another aspect of the project, of the Sanctuary City project. How displacement um, functions and how it looks like. The mission has a long history of gentrification. 99 maybe will be the first one, 2008, and then what's going on right now with the pandemic. Um, the, uh, the, uh, the the way cities work in this country, or don't work, is that some districts, neighborhoods in different cities in the country are redlined. So redlining is a process that the cities go through when where the investment happens in that particular neighborhood. It happened in the Mission, happened in the Fillmore, it happened in West Oakland. So it happened in many, many cities, Bay Area, California, and also the entire country. So they let the neighborhood collapse basically financially. And so abandoned buildings in the Mission are not necessarily a rarity. If anything, they're the norm, they're the rule. That building and many other buildings that are abandoned can provide shelter to uh, to uh, to different people. They can provide a home, refuge to the homeless population. They can provide a sanctuary to undocumented immigrants. Not only that building, but other buildings are around the city. So that's for me the interaction that I have with that building and many other buildings in the city. In 2010, I worked on a project documenting ICE rates, immigration and customs enforcement rates, and I documented 15 locations, and those are the locations that were rated between '08 and '09 during the Obama administration. So photographing these buildings brought me very close to the history of architecture in San Francisco, and also the history of displacement.
Can I just speak on that a point you said earlier, that these abandoned buildings can usually offer sanctuary? We definitely saw that while installing the project. This area is usually a space for vendors from the community to kind of just make money, and it's like a side hustle for people. We definitely saw, like, your point that it's a form of sanctuary even if it is abandoned. And I think it kind of like goes into this next question. So we understand this project has been presented in various cultural sites, and the exchange in stories and narratives are gathered and archived as a community conversation that informs your messaging. Can you share a scope of the emotional response from contributors? And how does this project offer sanctuary to those experiencing these conversations?
Entendemos que este proyecto se ha presentado en varios sitios culturales y el intercambio de historias y narrativas se recopila y archiva como una conversación comunitaria que informa su mensaje. ¿Puedes resumir algunas de las respuestas y emociones de los participantes? ¿Y cómo ofrece este proyecto santuario a quienes participaron en esas conversaciones?
The Sanctuary City project is this like this massive collaboration with many individuals and many institutions. Uh, the first time we installed the Sanctuary City project was in '09 at the Queen's Nails Annex as an art installation. And from then on, we have been working with uh, museums, galleries, cultural centers, the streets from Tijuana all the way to Seattle. It'll go to San Antonio, then it's going to Massachusetts, and then New York. It's going to Mexico City at the beginning of the year. So the participants are very, very, very different. Um, the responses also tend to be very different. So I have uh, I do have a lot of people's responses to the project, and but I think the first response is the quotes in the banners themselves. So when you went to the first time that we installed the print shop in San Francisco at the Buenos Center for the Arts, you enter this gallery and there's a timeline on the wall. And the timeline documents what has happened uh, in immigration history from 89 to 2017 when it was installed at YBCA. There are numbers, deportations, detentions, remittances. There's policy. There is like laws. There is border patrol officers that are protecting the border. So there's all this information that we have collected, and that for us that's our framework. And we have these three different printing tables. So that's the platform. People come and they print with us. And for the first 2.5 weeks, we had 6 different questions that we asked the audience. So one of them is, what is a sanctuary? The same question you asked me earlier. Uh, have you seen an ICE raid? What would you tell an immigrant? And people will give us responses to these questions. So the answers to these questions, we selected um, some of them, and we made them into posters. So that's the first response, right? What you see in the banners is people's responses. We have presented also at elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, and universities. Um, there is sometimes anti-immigrant sentiment, and we listen and we talk to them. It hasn't been violent at all. If anything, people are upset because they don't understand. There is also been a lot of like, this is a great project, and we love the project, thank you for doing this. And for us, it is a pro-immigration project. We don't give voice to anti-immigrant sentiments, and we know they're out there. But for that, they have the news and the president in this country. So we don't give them voice, but we listen to them. And an example is in Santa Cruz, Cabrillo College. We're talking, and this older guy, kind of like in the front seat, kind of like moving, and he's like, "I have a question." The guy said, and I was like, "Yeah." And the guy said, "Do you believe in open borders?" And I was like, "Well, if a closed border is when it's a place where people get killed, where kids get killed, women get raped. Yeah, I believe in open borders. I don't believe in closed borders. And by the way, my parents came from Mexico probably the same way as many people came to this country and documented. I'm first generation. I was born in San Diego, but I never lived in San Diego. I lived in Tijuana my entire life. Well, until I was 21 years old. So I've seen that border change from like chicken wire during uh, Bush father all the way to what it is right now. Clinton was the one that built the first wall. That's Operation Gatekeeper. Bush son was the one that continued the wall. Obama expanded and doubled the wall, and then Trump is also trying to expand it and triple the wall. So people do not know this information. People do not know how this is affecting humans. And again, I think that I am ready to have a conversation, and don't get upset, right? Just kind of like see where they go with the questions and try to give an answer that can help them understand differently.
So, you talk about the project seems like it was influenced by the experience of doing border work, coming here, understanding Santuario, and you talk about it, you're referencing a lot of like what we perceive as immigration or migration is usually, south of the border. In your research, I'm wondering if you found any kind of contrast to that perceived notion that most migration comes from just south of the border. Like, can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So unfortunately, we mostly look at the border between Mexico and the United States. So the migration that we see happening comes from South America, Central America, and Mexico. Um, not everyone comes undocumented. Some people come with work visas, student visas, and they end up staying here. There's also refugee asylum seekers, and that's another, another way of like coming to this country. So because we are in California, we are mostly dealing with the U.S. Mexico border. If I was in New York or on the East Coast, I'd be looking at a different migration for sure.
Got it. So this one you were really focusing on the actual physical border, but not. Yeah, I think it's an interesting something to follow through, and this is what's made me think about Ciudad Santuario, that there's so many um, refugees and folks that come from other parts of the world. And it's really during the current, administration, how we're even attacking refugee, visas and refugee asylum. And so what does that mean? You have one of the last banners is the title of it is "Seeking Asylum is Not a Crime." So I think it would be interesting to see how that evolves in the future. Yvette, do you have any other questions?
Just our last one. Sergio, what are we not asking? Is there anything you would like to share?
Sergio, ¿qué no estamos preguntando? ¿Hay algo que te gustaría compartir?
That banner, the "Seek Asylum is Not a Crime," asylum seekers are going through different processes right now, especially coming from Central America, come from Mexico, and they 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 have to register in the first country they arrive to. So Guatemalans, Mexico, right? Salvadorians, Guatemala, and both Guatemala and Mexico have agreed with this administration to do that. That's the same pattern that we see right now in Europe. People that come into from Northern Africa into Europe, they first land in Italy, so they have to register in Italy and stay in Italy. People don't want to stay there. Northern Africa and Middle Easterns, they don't want to go to Italy. They want to come up north, whether it's France or Germany, Switzerland, the UK. And that's the same with Guatemalans and Salvadorians. They don't want to go to Guatemala. They don't want to go to Mexico. They want to come here, the United States. So that has changed, and Mexico is not ready for that. Guatemala is not ready for that. So instead of having you register to that first country you arrive to, why don't we have in this country lawyers that can help you facilitate your papers? That's a much easier way to understand asylum seekers. In terms of what questions you're not asking, I don't know. I don't know. I think that you ask a lot of questions. I think that we done many interviews, and I think that these are some of the questions that people ask. People want to know about the project. So I don't know. I don't know what to. It's like how did you find out about the project?
How do we find out about the project? Well, I think it's we follow your work. I think that it's worth noting that we know of your practice and giving your relationship to Galería de la Raza, and been part of the first regeneration, or one of the regeneration cohorts. And so we've consistently followed the work. And I think what was really um, very powerful, that I felt was what always stayed with me as a visual iconography of like a statement, was when there was the poster that said immigrant. And when I first saw it, this is right around, I would probably say it's still under Obama. Is that timing right? And so I felt that as we were dealing with, one of the largest deportations histories, to claim that and to put it on a wall, and to make it accessible for folks to be part of that conversation, was really powerful. We've had over 11 million people, deported. And then when I started thinking about it, when the caravana was arriving to the border, I'm also from the borderlands of Tijuana, San Diego. and I was specifically there the day that they closed the border, and it was pretty shocking to see the border closed. And so it was just a beautiful to see the creation of work that celebrates a label that perhaps is so charged with hate, with survive, with fear, and to see it up. It also allowed for me to sort of say, well, it's a statement of also survival, of flourishing, of pride, and I've been following the project since. So um, your your work is definitely preaching to the choir. It doesn't require for us to um, convince us that we believe in open borders and that we believe that no human being is illegal, and that but I think that the more and more we're working with younger generations to understand this history, I think it's really important. So in this time, particularly when we've seen xenophobic rise around, hate, to be able to have a project that actually just makes people stop, wonder, embrace it, that is, I think, the role that art and culture in the service of community can play. And so, one of the examples that we have was after putting the project up, the very maybe within 24 hours, we went by to see how it was holding up. And as we were sort of finding our place, we look over and there was a young person, a young woman, taking a photo of one of the banners, and she was completely overjoyed. She just was so, you could see it in her face, what this meant for this young person that is doing cultural work also in that same district, to see a message where it was about, there's no ice and peace, and that was really moving to her, and we connected, and it was just a way of building bridges. So I feel that the messaging is our affirmations, in many ways our affirmations, and there are the affirmations that our community needs right now as we're dealing with so much displacement, whether it be economic, whether it be the pandemic that is forcing us to isolate, for them to have a little bit of whimsy when they go out and see in their environment. I think it's really powerful. So that's my thought on that.
Thank you. That the
Yeah.
poster was done in 2017 at YBCA.
Mm,
This is during Trump. Uh,
okay.
the first time we installed the Sanctuary City project, Queens Nels Annex in '09, nobody paid attention to the project because we had elected a black progressive president, and we thought it was going to be good for our community, but he was not. One thing about the building Mission and 18th Street, and I think I told you that, Annie, that in 2010, when I was photographing ICE raids location, I photographed that block because a raid happened there. I think El Balazo Galería was around there, and I
Balazo.
part of the installation is this photograph, this accordion book, and then the locations where the raids happen. And one location is Mission 18th Street. And when you come to my house and you leave my house, it is on top of the door. It says Mission 18th Street. And I installed this in 2010. So 10 years ago, I knew I was going to do something with that building.
The way the universe works.
Destiny.
Yes, definitely. So, the interesting thing is, in your work, you're talking about how architecture has influenced your work, site, geographic placement, movement of people, and as you know, that building will be torn down, and affordable housing will be planted there, and so one of the things that we're sort of, we want to make sure that art creates a platform of roots, how we think of our sites more than just brick and mortar, but as cultural um, sites of resilience. And so, as part of this change coming, one of the goals that we have is that by inserting these conversations onto the building, that we're making sure that also the powers that be, the folks that are there understand their shifts, understand that, you know, there is going to be housing, and how do we hold those that own these sites as community nonprofit developers accountable to the values of what this community ideals and needs are. So as the artist is presenting, if you could give me 3 words that says, how would you like to see this corner? What would you prioritize?
Affordable housing, um, um, nonprofits in the building, and some sort of like community involvement, like public involvement, right? Whether in the form of a dance, a performance, you know, it's like activities for children, you know, for elders, you know, a place where the community can feel like, wow, this is it. That's what we need. That's what we want. You know, this is us. Not an expensive restaurant, not a brewery, not a winery, which are great, but I think that something else is needed. Not that, but definitely, you know, affordable housing, nonprofits there, and public events.
Well said. Well, Sergio, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this, you know, beautiful project, just completely moving. And, you know, we thank you to the audience for tuning in to Galería de la Raza's podcast. You can visit the Sanctuary City project installation at 2205 Mission Street at the intersection of 18th and Mission. If you want to learn more about the project, you can visit the sanctuarycityproject.com or check out any of Galeria's social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter with the handle at Galería de la Raza, or visit our website, galeriadelaraza.org. And before we close, I also want to mention that this collaboration was made possible through the support of the Mission Economic Development Agency, MEDA, who owns that site and is committed to developing it into affordable housing. Thank you for letting us, you know, use your building, activate it, and make sure that it's centered around community visions and ideals.
Gracias, Sergio, por participar en esta entrevista y gracias a nuestra audiencia por sintonizarse al podcast de Galería de la Raza. Puede visitar la instalación de The Sanctuary City Project en 2205 Mission Street en la intersección de la 18 y la Misión. Si desea obtener más información sobre el proyecto, puede visitar sanctuarycityproject.com o visitar cualquiera de las páginas de redes sociales de Galería de la Raza, Facebook, Instagram o Twitter, con el identificador Galería de la Raza, o visitar nuestro sitio web galeriadelaraza.org.